Sometimes when you're playing League, you're gonna fall behind. And you know what? That sucks, but it doesn't mean the game is over. Today, we're going to be going over the things that you need to focus on when you fall behind in order to catch back up or even get a lead for yourself. The best way to avoid losing from falling behind is to get your Game Leap membership. This Black Friday, you can get your Game Leap membership for just $1.99 per month with your annual subscription. Our website is the best learning tool out there for you if you want to be improving as fast as possible. We have hundreds of guides, all done by challenger players, and we're continuously updating out-of-date guides and adding new guides, meaning you're always going to have content. This is a very limited time offer. We're only running this deal for a few days, so make sure you don't miss out. Click the link in the description below today. Now, with that shameless plug out of the way, let's talk about exactly what you need to be doing to catch back up when you do fall behind. The first and most important thing is you need to set realistic goals to catch yourself back up. In most cases, you want to just equalize your lane and make sure that you can get back in the game. You don't want to set your sights too high because then you might just crash and burn and put yourself even further behind than you already were. Start with small things like focusing on individual CS, looking to get as much of it as you can. If you can stop the CS gap from widening, then you can stop yourself from just hemorrhaging resources to the enemy team. Get the situation under control, slow the game down, and get yourself back to an acceptable spot. This is the first step. If you just play like a psycho, constantly looking for all-ins and fights, then yeah, it might work out like 1 out of 10 times, but most cases, it's just going to put you even further in the hole. Slow the game down as much as possible, focus on your CSing, and just stabilize. If the enemy is playing super aggressive and in your face, then play a little bit further back, trade back when you can, but just don't take damage. That's the most important thing. It's okay to give up a little bit of CS if you have to. It's not worth dying for. Now, if you do need help in order to stop this from happening, say the enemy champion has a freeze on you, and if you walk up you're going to die, then it's okay to ask for help. League of Legends is a team-based game. You can't always do it alone, so if you need help with something, then ask. This could be anything. If you need help breaking a freeze, if the enemy is over pushing and you see an opportunity to kill him, but you can't do it alone. Anything at all. A lot of people are afraid to ask for help simply because they're afraid of the reaction that they're going to get. But remember, a lot of the time, the people aren't going to be paying any attention to what's going on in your lane. The jungler might not know that you're bleeding resources and that you need help to stabilize. So asking can't hurt. The worst case scenario is they say no, and there's nothing that you can do about that specific game. But you for sure will not make things worse by asking for help. Once you have stabilized yourself, the hardest part is over. Now all that's left is getting yourself back into the game or even getting a lead. Now, once you have stabilized, your laner is still probably going to have a lead. It doesn't mean that you can just outright beat them in a fight now. So we gotta play smart. CS should still be your #1 priority. If you can't kill them, at least get as much gold as possible so that you can try to start closing that gap. You should constantly be looking for opportunities to take control of the wave. Try setting up a freeze right outside of your tower to give you as much gold as possible in a safe way. If you need to base, or if trades are a little bit closer, then you can look to start a slow push and trade with the enemy, making your minion advantage give a little bit extra damage and oomph to your trade. The fantastic thing about starting a slow push as well is it means that you can push it to the enemy tower and then go into the river and use plants. Plants are one of the best ways to close the gap in a lane. For example, if there is a honey fruit up in the river, then you can take a heavy trade with the enemy. Even if you lose that trade, that's okay. You walk into the river, you take the honey fruit, and suddenly that was a hard winning trade for you. On the other hand, if you start a slow push and push it all the way to the tower, crash it into their tower, then you can roam into the enemy jungle or your own jungle and use a Scryer's orb to see whether or not they have the lane warded. If they do have the lane warded, then you can just clear the wards, and if they don't, then then your jungler can just sneak into the brush while the lane starts pushing back towards you, and you can try to perform a gank. If there's a blast cone up, then you can have your jungler use that blast cone again to perform a gank. Plants should always be used at their fullest, and a lot of the time people don't, so it can be a way to get yourself back into the game. Now, if you can't do any of this, your jungler won't help you, there's no plants, and you can't get wave control, then one thing you can do is look to lane swap with a different role. Just because you're far behind your lane does not mean that the rest of your teammates are far behind, and it doesn't mean that you're going to be far behind the enemy team. In these cases, you might be able to swap with one of your teammates to put yourself in a lane that you're much more comfortable in, that you can farm in and catch up, while your teammate handles the lane that's a little bit harder for you. If you do end up lane swapping, then you need to be very careful not to lose in the new lane that you're in, and you need to make sure that the player that's swapping with you can go even in your old lane. If neither of these are the case, then you're just going to put your entire team further behind with this swap, and it's not going to be beneficial for anyone. Now, the last strategy that you could adopt is roaming. Remember that just because you can't win your lane in a 1v1 does not mean that you can't be useful to your team. You can try roaming to other lanes or to objectives like Dragon or First Tower to try and make plays happen, giving the rest of your team an advantage. There's also the chance that you could walk away from roaming to one of these objectives with some kills, allowing you to get back into the game if your own lane didn't respond with a roam of their own. Now, what if none of these things work, or you're not able to do any of them? Maybe your team doesn't want to cooperate with you, or you're never able to get wave control, or whatever it may be. Then what do you need to do? At this point, you need to look at the rest of your team and determine whether it even matters if you win your lane or not, if they're going to be able to carry you. If the rest of your team is doing exceptionally well, then all you have to do is play back, play safe, make sure you don't die, make sure you get as much CS as possible, and that's it. You can win off of that. I know it doesn't feel great, but getting carried is also a skill when it comes to League of Legends. Sometimes you're just going to have to ditch your pride, get carried, and take the win. If your team is especially far ahead, then you can always just group with them and force team fights to happen. A lot of the time, in these cases, they're going to be able to deal with your lane even if they have a bit of a lead on you. Now, this does not mean that you should always just AFK group anytime that you don't have a lead. This is not what I'm saying. This is actually really bad to do, and it's why you should only do it if your team has a huge lead. If your team doesn't have a lead, then it's better to just sit in the side lane and catch up in farm, even if the opposing laner groups with their team. It's better for your team to hold a tower 4 versus 5 while you catch up in the side lane, getting as much farm as possible. That way, when it's time to 5v5 away from your towers, you're actually able to win a fight. This is a trade-off. You're trading tower damage or maybe even a full tower to the enemy team in exchange for time to get solo gold and EXP for yourself. If you're behind once your tower has fallen, you want to make sure to catch as much CS as possible. Don't just leave waves on their own. You always want to crash them into the enemy tower so that they push back to you quickly and you can catch as much farm as possible. If your lane leaves to go somewhere else, don't just leave the wave there. Make sure you crash it first. Another option, if your team again is doing really well, is you can just sit in the side lane freezing that wave for as long as you can. If your team is able to pull off the 4v5, then sitting in the side lane is going to give you solo gold and EXP that your enemy laner isn't going to be able to capitalize on themselves. Okay, so what if none of these things are the case? The game is looking doomed, your entire team is losing, they can't pull off a 4v5, they can't even survive under their tower 4v5. Then what do you need to do? If you are completely out of other options, then I give you permission to go crazy. Just go ham. If you don't outscale and your team is losing, then you should just all in the enemy champion, and who knows, maybe a miracle will happen, you'll play it absolutely perfectly, or maybe they'll just mess it up entirely, and you'll come out with a kill, getting you back in the game. If you're able to pull off a miracle 1v1, or a miracle 2v2, or 4v4, or any miracle fight, then it allows you to put yourself in a position where you can get back in the game and start slowly grinding your way into the lead. Most commonly, these miracle plays are going to be a miracle 1v1 for the top laner or mid laner, a miracle smite from the jungler, smiting either Baron or Dragon away from the enemy team. For bot lane, it's more of a miracle play where you'll have a team fight and maybe you'll land a 5-man ultimate or something. The main point here is you don't want to give up before going for a miracle play. The worst case scenario is the miracle play just doesn't work and you still lose the game. The best case scenario though is the miracle play gets you back into the game and you actually end up winning. Understand that, especially in lower elos, people don't know how to close out a game, so you're going to have plenty of opportunities to make these miracle plays happen. Remember, this is just your last ditch effort. There are plenty of things that you can do before this to get yourself back in the game. Now that is just about all that I have for you for today's video on what you should be doing if you do find yourself falling behind. If you haven't already, make sure to check out our website, GameLeap.com. This Black Friday, you can get your GameLeap membership for just $1.99 per month with your annual subscription. Our website is the best learning tool out there for you if you want to be improving as fast as possible. We have courses both on the 5 fundamental roles as well as champion-specific courses. So if that is something that interests you, then make sure to check it out using the link in the description below. This is a very limited time offer. We're only running this deal for a few days, so make sure you don't miss out. Click the link in the description below today. As always, I'm Panther. I hope you learned something valuable, and I will see you in the next one.